I know, it's been a while. Welcome back to the shop. Actually, that's not right. It's not about this shop, it's about that one. Oh. So this is the new workshop, and this is how I built it. So here's the first batch of wood that I've need to make the frame for my new workshop. It's under a little tent because I knew it was going to take months and I had to keep it as dry as possible, and it was dreary in this time of the year. I think it was early January. Right, there on the floor is a little compressor cable, airline, that goes through the wall there in the old workshop and pops out through this little beehive and then goes straight underground. It comes out of one of the service ducts on the slab. You'll see that in a second. There you go, there it is. That means I can use air tools, nailers and things down on the slab without any problem at all and having to run a compressor out there. With the sheer quality of wood that I had to cut up squarely and at various angles, I knocked up this rather crappy, as I think you'll agree, mitre station. It's, in all honesty, it proved absolutely excellent and accurate enough. Let's leave it at accurate enough. As you can see, the air nailer is a really useful bit of kit. One of the most useful bits of kit, along with this miter saw that I use to make this workshop. The first thing I did with all of these pieces of wood was just to trim off the ends to make sure they're all nice and square. Having done that, I'd marked the miter station here with the right length. These are the verticals, so that line there is exactly the right length. So just a case of putting them on one at a time and chopping them off to length. It's much easier to do these things in batches. So I did all of the verticals I needed for one side at a time. Firewood. These nail plate nails are funny things really. You can probably see that the shanks of them are twisted, so they actually slowly rotate as they go into the wood. They're like very slow helix screws, and the good thing is they don't come out. Having joined a couple of pieces of timber to get the right length sole plate, I then used another scrap, as you can see, to make sure that the verticals that we're now nailing on are actually square. Having done that with a couple of nails, I then drove in some long, I think these are 150mm 6-inch, maybe even 8-inch timber screws. Not sure that I needed them, but yeah, it's all belt and braces. Here's a rare appearance from my son. He helped me get this vertical, this side panel vertical. There was no way I was going to be able to do it myself, being as decrepit as I am. It did him good, get out in the sunlight. I put some temporary braces in there just to stop it falling over on me. Go on, boy, you can do it. Come on, get it up there. Go on, give it a push. Go on, push, man, push, push. There you go. Job's a good one. It's right now you realise there's nobody at home but you, and the drill is on the bench where you can't quite reach it. So go on, boy, run, you can do it. There you go. Forward planning, eh? It's important to get this as square as possible. If you don't, you'll be fighting it for the rest of the build. And when you get to put the tin on the roof, then you really have a problem. So yeah, best to get it square. The design called for a double thickness top plate, so here we go, just nailing it all together. So here I am assembling the lintel that's going to go above the double opening doors, which are effectively behind the camera from this angle. And it's got to be a fairly substantial beam, because it's got to cope with the loads that the door can't support, because the door is an opening and has no physical support for the roof line. So this is, as you can see, fairly heavily nailed together. And I also, once it's in place, put some I think M12 bolts through it. It was a really tight fit to get it in this end frame, and I found in the end the best way to do it, after dropping it a couple of times, was to put a temporary vertical in, sit it on, and then use my lightweight adjuster here to just ease it into place. What I do think is interesting is just how flimsy these structures are until they're actually fully built. I mean, you can see this whole frame, the whole thing is wobbling. Having got the basic wall frame done, it's time to move on. So the outside is clad in this OSB board. I don't know what it's called in the States, but here it's called oriented strand board, or sterling board, I think I've heard it described as. And it has to fit, in this particular design, it slightly overhangs or is right on the edge of the slab, so that the water, when it drips off the outside of the building, doesn't drip onto the slab, it drips clear. So I used these nail plates that I just put underneath the sole plate in order to just hold that OSB sheet in place. So I didn't have to worry about getting it particularly well lined up. All it had to do was sit there on these nail plates. And I thought it was quite a reasonable way of doing it. I think you can see from this shot that I'm just putting this OSB board in the corners, and that's because this stuff comes from the factory square. So to get your verticals absolutely vertical, it's really handy to just do the corners, and then it's also remarkable just how much it stiffens up the whole structure. So there we go, that's where we are at this particular junction. The corners are all done, and it's a question of going around and filling in the blanks. I used screws just to hold these OSB panels in place, and then once I'd got them all sorted, I went through with Nelly's nail gun and fixed them properly. And you can see here I left a little gap in the middle, and that's where the slightly shorter piece, and that's very useful because I didn't have a huge amount of airline, so I left that bit till last and just put screws in it because I couldn't reach it with the airline. One of the useful things with this saw is that you can set it to cut to a depth and it won't go any deeper. So that saves a little bit of time with a jigsaw to cut a part out like this. There you go, it fits like a glove. As per building regulations, or code as the Americans like to call it, the entire building is wrapped in this breathable vent layer that stops water getting in but allows moisture to get out. I fabricated the end gables on the ground. I made the first one and made it as accurate as possible, and then made the second one laying on top of the first one so that they're absolutely identical. Then lifted them into place and then just literally, as you just saw there, turn them up onto their ends. Because they're flat based, they support themselves quite well, and the ridge piece I'm putting in here is the icing on the cake. Really, it just holds it all together. I had some pretty cold days when I was constructing this, as you can see. Here's a couple of views of the birdmouth joint there, and this is the ridge plank which sits on top of those horizontals. I made myself a poor man's track saw out of my battery Makita circular saw and a couple of bits of OSB. And as you can see, I'm not using it in the right way here. The saw is supposed to be running where my right hand fingers are. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, if you have to work out in an uneven area, I do recommend these tripod ladders. Absolutely brilliant. It's so stable, and you really don't feel like you're going to fall off it unless you really try. There we go, fully clad. And that's where we are so far. It's starting to resemble a building. I said we had some cold days, just look at this. All frozen together. This board is a roof lintel, and I took it into my old workshop because it's a little bit warmer, and I made a jig. This is a piece of thick card that's cut off at the right angle for the end of the rafter, and it also has this bird mouth cut into it. So just once you've done that, it's a case of just following lines, cutting them out, and taking the whole pile back down, trimming them to length, and putting them in the roof. I used the first rafter as a template and made the rest of them exactly the same. When you've got so many of these things to make, it makes sense to do them in a batch and make them all absolutely identical. In that way, you end up with a properly square building that looks right and hasn't got any humps and hollers in it. Firewood. The natural tendency is for these roof rafts just to fall over and slide out. So ask me how I know. So I came up with this idea because effectively I did this project by myself. I think I did 95–98% of it entirely by myself. I had help laying the concrete pad, and you saw my lad earlier he helped me do some plasterboarding as well. Yeah, so using these ratchet straps, I could constrain the rafters so they didn't fall down, and then putting the horizontal beam across the bottom secures them. Once they're drilled and bolted through, as you see here, they're actually quite strong, stable structures. So yeah, the ratchet strap was really the only way I could think of doing it and maintaining it nice and square and in line across the whole roof piece. If I remember rightly, these screws are about 200, 250 long, that's 8 to 10 inches, and they go right through the rafter into the top plate, and as you can see they really do pull it down, and they're nice and flush so they don't get in the way. I also cross-nailed the rafters in place, which is something you have to do for the building regulations or code in the UK. Right, it's time to lose the tent. I've pretty much run out of wood that's underneath it, so it's time for it to go. More firewood. This weird looking contraption is actually the overhang for the end gables. The design called for a 6-inch overhang, 150mm in metric. So I again, because I'm a lone worker, I had to do this, find a way of doing this that made sense. So as you can see, I used some scrap wood just to overhang the edges and hold it in place. Having secured all the rafters, put them all in and got the ridge line nice and straight and it all lined up as best as I could do, I then decked the whole roof with this decking material. It's again, it's an OSB product, but it's tongued and grooved on the corners, on the edges I should say, so it all slots together. And so here we are, having completed that. You can see we're actually looking really now like a proper building. This is 16mm studding that I cut up into, I think they were 150mm long chunks, and they are actually to secure the whole building to the slab. What I did was drilled a hole through the sole plate into the slab, blow the dust out with Edward the compressor, and then use something called ArcM2, which is a chemical anchor. And you are honestly, half an hour after you've done it, there is no way you can get the stud out of the floor. So that's what secures this building to the actual slab. Sadly, I haven't got any footage of it whatsoever. So while I talk about that, you can see I'm on the roof, just putting the breathable membrane on. Again, part of the regulations. This is the actual material I use to finish the roof with. It's a straightforward trapezoidal tin. It's covered with something called plastisol. I think that's the right word. And oh dear. Oh dear. So yeah, this plastisol apparently has got a 30-year lifespan, which is going to be long enough for me. I'm nearly 60. By the time this stuff is needing replacing, I'll be nearly 90. So yeah, I think that should see me out. God, that's bloody depressing. You get to this age, you think, oh, how much time you got left? Good God. I think in hindsight, this was the scariest part of the whole build. I'm not frightened of heights at all, but this stuff, I mean, it was slightly drizzling, as you can probably see from the bits of tin laying on the floor, and it was so slippery. I was in constant fear of sliding off the roof. Horrible. My heart goes out to roofers who have to do this for a living. Sooner them than me. These are the battens that I'm going to use to put the cladding on the outside of the building. You have to, again, for regulations, you've got to have a bit of a standoff. And I know, don't judge me, I know I'm cutting them in cutting them in batches of 10, which is it 10 or 12? I know I shouldn't do that. That's the sort of thing that put me in hospital before with my table saw, but you never learn, do you? Or I don't anyway. So here's a tip. Put all your battens out where they need to be, mark the side of the building where they need to be fixed, and only put a single screw in the very top. Once you've done that, you can then go along with a spirit level and make them all vertical, and there you go. Once you've done that, then you know that the screws or nails or whatever you use to hold these things on will go into your verticals inside the building. There's a tip I got off YouTube. My building inspector told me that I couldn't use wood on the back wall because it's too close to my neighbour. It's just over a metre. What's that? Just over 3 feet. And so I had to fit something that was non-combustible. So I fitted this stuff. It's a brand name in the UK. It's called Hardy Plank. It's a fibrous cement board. It looks like painted wood, and it's nice stuff. But I did make a bit of a boob in fitting it. I used screws everywhere, and really you only need a hidden screw underneath each plank. So you can see all the screws that I've got there, and if you do it professionally or properly, you don't see any of those screws. They're all hidden underneath. So yeah, my bad, but I'm not going to replace it. It cost me £1,000. All of the planks, the cladding, are all dipped in this penetrating wood preserver, and I also went to the trouble is this is Western Red Cedar that was pressure treated for me by a local company. So I bought a batch of it, and they've got an autoclave, so they pressure treated it with the stain. And what I did was use the very bottom edge, the edge of each plank. Their autoclave really does soak the wood into the end grain. So that's all of the bottom edges are their end grain, not mine. So very few of them, I think probably 5 in the whole thing, are actually cut. And this is my little technique for closing up the joints. Oh, there's a cat inspecting my soak away. Yep, that seemed to work, she said. This is the double door surround, and there's a gap because there's 2 layers of battens underneath the boarding. The outside boarding I went for vertical, which meant that I had vertical battens, and then on top of the vertical battens, horizontal battens. And the net result was I ended up with a small gap where the door hinges were going to be. So I filled them with 4mm ply, which I had quite a lot of from my old days in business. These windows were upcycled units. They came from a local reclaim yard, and the building was built around, or the wall that they're going in was built around the size of these windows after I'd got them. I saved myself quite a lot of money because they are fairly dear. They're also bloody heavy. So the outside is painted anthracite, and the inside I left white because in my experience, my old workshop is dank and dark, and I wanted this one to be as light as possible. And you'll see in the when we get more towards the end, where I show you where I am at the moment, just how light and bright the thing is. The windows are held in with mastic and screws, and so far I have to say they are absolutely superb in that they were cheap and they hold the water out, and I think they look quite nice, to be honest. It's not the best shot, but they do look quite nice in real life. The window glass, I think, was sitting around for probably a couple of years before I bought them from the reclaim company. All the labels were so difficult to get off. I ended up chiseling them off. it's the only way I could shift them. And I used some xylene thinners, I think it was, to get the remainder of the glue off the panels. Anyway, they scrubbed up quite nicely, and they're ever so easy to fit, these things. You just plonk them in the hole and push the beading in place. You might need a little bit of a hammer to get it to fit, but if you do this, slide the hammer along the glass. Don't hit try and hit the beading directly, because you'll smash your panel. So here we go again with my poor man's track saw. This time you'll notice that I'm using it the way it should be done. The saw is actually, there you go, the saw is in the right place. And these panels I'm cutting out are for the double opening doors. They turned out to be quite big and severely heavy. They're actually more than I can lift now. It's a two-man job. Sure, I need to take them off. There you go. Having cut that first panel, it's a good idea to make sure that it fits the hole. Haven't done that. There we go. I'd notched the half-lapped the corner joints for the frame. Again, that feature on that saw was really quite useful. So there we go. Expanding wood glue seemed to do the job really nicely, and it's just a case of carefully squeezing it out, assembling it all, clamping it and leaving it for 2 or 3 hours to harden up. That expanding glue I think is quite good because it fills a few of the gaps. I'm no woodworker, as you can see. This is what the fully built internal frame looked like, and as you can see, it's a traditional braced door. It doesn't need it because it's effectively it's a stressed skin. But before I put the back side on, the inside as it were, I insulated it. So here we go. This is a test fit. Get the hinge position in the right place, and then that tells me exactly where I need to put the other half of the hinges, the actual bit that it rotates on. We're getting on now. It's time to plasterboard the ceiling, and I hired this plasterboard lifter, and I couldn't have done it without, to be perfectly honest. It saved hours and hours of propping stuff up with props and broom handles, and yeah, it was the only sensible way to do it. Wall insulation are these rock wool panels. They're 100mm thick, or 4 inches. And you just it's unbelievably easy. You literally just cut them with an old carving knife to fit the space between the verticals. Ever so easy, really quick. I think I did the whole building in less than a day. Right, here we go. This is the only other time my son, bless his cotton socks, decided he was going to help me. I'm not bitter. No, I'm not bitter. These trees had to come down to please the building inspector. Timber. More firewood. The story here is there's no damp-proof course in this concrete slab. I was always going to put another layer. Once I'd got this far in the building, I was going to put my damp-proof course down and lay another 2 inches of concrete. But I thought, yeah, I'm not really sure I need to do that. And I talked to my building inspector, and he said, well, why don't you put down an epoxy damp-proof course? So in order to do that, I really needed to grind off the the top surface and make it really nice and flat. So I hired a diamond grinder, and this is the damp proof course. I think it's probably bitumen based, but it's an epoxy, and it comes out the thickness of treacle, and it was absolutely awful to work with, but has laid a reasonably nice damp proof course. I mean, as you can see, the instructions say you can roller it on or paint it on with a paintbrush, but in the end, I thought that isn't going to work for me. It's just too thick. So I squeegeed it on with a trowel, and that seemed to work. However, I got lots of pinpricks in it, and talking to experts who make this sort of paint, they say that using a trowel may well have trapped more air in it, and the pinpricks I had are the bubbles that have come out as a result of raising to the surface and then bursting. And this is the top coat. I painted it. I think it's called Goosewing Grey. Again, it's epoxy, and once you've started this process, you've got to keep going until the epoxy is fully applied, because one layer bonds to the previous layer. So you've got a window of opportunity before it's too solid for you to actually put the next layer on without abrading it back. So I've been told. I may end up redoing that because I wasn't totally impressed with the quality of the finish. Right, let's get some light in here. If you made it this far, congratulations, and apologies for the sound in here. It's just a white box, jazz hands. So it's a bit echoey, to say the least. There's nothing in here apart from just a few bits and pieces that I've left over from construction. So yeah, this has taken 10 months. I'll drop in some shots of around the building so you get a flavour of what it actually looks like. It's inside is 44 square metres. Outside is, under the complete roof line, is 55 square metres. There will eventually be a solar array on the roof, and over by the door, there will be a battery. I'm going to put a solar battery in as well. It's got 8 tons of concrete, 8 cubic metres of concrete in the floor. A minimum of 6 inches, 150 mil, and a maximum of 450, which is about 18 inches, I think, thickness of concrete. So theoretically, you can put 100 tons on this floor, as long as you spread it out. So I think it's going to cope with all the machinery I'm likely to want to put on it. Ceiling height is 2,200 millimetres, which is slightly less than a standard 2400 ceiling height, and that was because I wanted it to settle in its landscape a little bit. Also, it's actually the lower. I use my datum as the lowest point in the garden, so effectively it actually does sit in the ground. That may cause problems with flooding in the future, but we'll see. Yeah, so here we are. The main basic construction is done. As you can probably see, there's a little bit of cladding to go on. There's a skirting board to go in, and there at the top there's going to be an electrical duct. But we'll deal with that in more detail in the next upcoming video. So thanks for watching. It's been an absolute blast building this. It's taken 10 months, and for those who are interested, it's cost about the same as a small family car. So it's not a cheap process. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and or notification spanner in my case, and we'll see you on the next one. It's been a blast. Thanks very much for watching. Ta-da.